My parents' house is also my wife's house. It's only natural for you to pay for the rebuilding of my parents' house."
My husband suddenly started saying outrageous things. My parents-in-law, who are in favor of rebuilding the house, came up with an argument that I couldn't understand. Wives are supposed to understand this without having to say all this stuff, right?
That's right. A wife should support her husband. If your husband says to pay for it, then do as he says.
When I told him I wasn't going to pay, my mother-in-law gave me a hard time. My kind son decided to marry a trashy woman like you. Don't be selfish. I can't take it anymore. I need to get out of here. Thus, I strongly decided to get a divorce. My name is Emily. I was 34 years old when I married Ryan, the same age as me, and I've been living with him for 5 years. Since the beginning of our marriage, I have had the word divorce in my head on a daily basis. The first time it came to my mind was when Ryan suddenly quit his job.
"I quit my job today,"
Ryan told me as soon as I got home. He had been working for an electronics company since he graduated from college, with a decent salary and a good bonus. I, on the other hand, work for a foreign cosmetics company and make about the same as Ryan. So when we got married, we decided to share equally in living expenses, rent, savings, and other money matters. And then he suddenly quits his job.
"I'll choose the next job I want. Until then, Emily, please support us."
Not only did he resign on his own accord, he also abandoned his living expenses. Hey, that's not what we talked about. Of course, I tried to talk him out of it, but he didn't care.
"I've been thinking about retiring for a long time. Now that I'm married to you, we don't need my earnings to survive, right? Then I wouldn't have to do a job I don't want. I already know what I'm going to do next."
Are you saying you're counting on my salary? That's too selfish.
"I'm not asking you to let me be unemployed forever. Why can't I count on you for a few months?"
A few months? You better promise me. I thought it would be impossible to support a family on my salary alone, but when he told me it would be a short term of a few months, I thought I might be able to do that. Looking back, that was probably a bad idea. At the time, I had just gotten married and I was still in love with Ryan. I forgave him before I heard any details about his next job. 3 months later, he finally got another job. But the pay is less than 2/3 of what he was making before, and he doesn't get a bonus. Ryan insisted that it was the best job he'd ever had because he got a lot of time off and the work was easy. I was beginning to distrust Ryan's insistence. Was he really willing to help support this family? My fears turned into certainty. My husband and I were at my parents-in-law's house when he started arguing with me about living expenses in front of them.
"It's not fair to put money in the house at the same allocation as before, even though my salary has gone down. Dad, Mom, don't you think so?"
When my in-laws heard that, they made me look bad, and they justified Ryan's actions.
"It's a wife's job to support her husband. If Ryan's salary got lowered, then Emily, you should be putting in more money into the house."
That's right. You're his wife. You have to support your husband. Ryan changed jobs to do what he wanted to do. You should be proud of that, right? Ryan got his parents on his side, blaming me.
"See? My parents are saying this, so it shouldn't be a problem."
I knew he never wanted to support each other from the beginning. I thought about getting divorced many times, but after being married after 30 years old, I was afraid of being single. I reluctantly accepted Ryan's and my in-laws' requests. I agreed to take care of the situation by asking Ryan to pay me 1/2 of what he had been paying before. But this was just the beginning. Ryan, a vain man, began to use the money we had saved together to buy things he wanted without consulting me. It seems that Ryan is a lot like his parents. His parents are just as vain as him. My mother-in-law has been a stay-at-home mom since they were married, saying that it's not very presentable to work. And my father-in-law also said it's not cool to work after retirement. So, they both live on pensions. And yet they ask me for money to live on.
It's the responsibility of a child to support a parent who lives on a pension, isn't it?
That's right. You're supposed to give us money. I could understand if they asked their son Ryan, but asking me, his wife? But I tolerated all of that. It would be wrong to say I tolerated it. I just didn't fight it. I was already exhausted from working and housework. After all, I had to earn the money that Ryan didn't pay. And that's not all. Ryan began to say that he was going to rebuild his parents' house. If he had some idea about where to get the funds for it, then it would be fine. But he thought, just let Emily pay for it. And all he wanted me to pay for their ideal house. When his parents heard this, their eyes lit up and they agreed with him. Eventually, they got into the swing of things and started saying, I want this and I want that. I thought, this can't go on like this. I hurriedly interrupted him. Wait a minute, I never agreed to this. How much do you think it would cost to rebuild? Ryan sighed in annoyance. My in-laws stared at me with a look of disgust on their faces.
Hey, you know you're my wife, right? My parents' house is your house too. So of course, you'll pay for it to be rebuilt.
And my in-laws also came after me. That's right. You should know this. You're so inconsiderate. Why can't you just say yes?
I told you that a wife should support her husband. Your husband says he wants to rebuild the house. Why don't you obey him?
Talking to these people is not going to get us anywhere. I've learned that well in this marriage. But this time it's nothing compared to the scale of what we've done before. We are rebuilding a house after all. There's no way I'll agree to it. Anyway, I won't pay for it. With that, I left the place with my back to them. For the next few days, Ryan and my in-laws blamed me. Each time my resolve to get divorced grew stronger, I was reminded that I was already over 40 years old. It took a lot of courage to be single at my age. Besides, I didn't want to displease my parents, who were more than happy to see me get married. I wondered if there was any way I could get them to stop the rebuilding. That's when I thought of something. As usual, I received a phone call from my mother-in-law. Emily, please cut it out. How long are you going to keep troubling Ryan? You're terrible. You're a piece of trash who couldn't even get married for the rest of your life if Ryan hadn't gotten married to you. Ryan took you in because he's a sweet boy. You have no right to be selfish. My mother-in-law's angry, high-pitched voice echoed over the phone. The word selfish particularly offended me. Which one of us is selfish? Who do you think is supporting Ryan, who has been doing whatever he wants? I made a strong decision in my heart. That's it. I'm divorcing him. He's going to get what he deserves for doing whatever he wants. I unilaterally cut off my mother-in-law's and went to my lawyer's office, which I had never had the courage to do before. A few weeks later, I was summoned to my in-laws' house. The reason, of course, was to convince them to give me the money to rebuild the house. My mother-in-law was bragging to the neighbors about the rebuilding project, and she wanted to move the conversation along quickly. So, she came over to me. It's the responsibility of the wife to pay for the rebuilding, you know. You're the one who has to put yourself on the line for her parents and his parents, aren't you? Apparently, they had been to a showroom and had already gotten a quote from a contractor. When I looked at the estimate, I saw that the option fees were outrageous. The total was more than double what I had imagined. Ryan was smiling like a man who is not interested in anything else and said,
You better take out a loan.
Okay, I will gladly cooperate, I replied without a pause, and the three of them turned their surprised faces to me.
What? Did you just say you'll cooperate? Seriously?
Ryan, incredulous, asks for confirmation with a straight face. Yes, I did, because you asked me to. Ryan's face breaks into a smile at that reply.
Emily, I knew you would come around. That's my wife. I didn't know what was going to happen when you said you wouldn't pay, but I knew you'd understand.
My in-laws are smiling and nodding their heads. Yeah, that's what being a wife is all about.
I see you've learned to appreciate your husband's greatness too, Emily.
From the day I said I would help out, I was in charge of all the financial aspects of the rebuilding. Meanwhile, Ryan and the in-laws had several meetings with the house builder, but I wasn't invited to any of them. I guess they thought they could handle the money. As time went by, they told me, "We're going to sign a contract with the house builder, so you'll have to be there." When it comes to contracting, the house builder has to get their financial affairs in order. They told me to bring documents related to the mortgage, but I didn't apply for a loan. Instead, I packed dozens of divorce papers in my bag and headed for my in-laws' house. My mother-in-law, feeling a little giddy, said, "The deal is in the afternoon, so let's have lunch and then go." Ryan was very excited to hear that.
Hey, I was wondering if we can still add options. I'd like an electric garage.
Ryan's father leans in as well.
I'm sure you can get one. A motorized garage sounds so convenient.
They have no idea the despair they're about to experience. I'll finally be free from the hell I've been living in for the past 5 years. I couldn't suppress a smile as I looked at their happy faces. Let's have it then. Before we get started, I have to tell you something, I said, pulling out a divorce decree from my bag.
Huh? What kind of joke is this? Is this some kind of sideshow?
Ryan snickered when he saw the divorce decree.
Emily, you have no taste. If you're going to make a joke like that, why don't you just make a witty one about how you took out a bigger mortgage or something?
He snatched the divorce decree from my hand, crumpled it up into a ball, and tossed it in the trash. I immediately pull out a second set of divorce papers and shove it in front of Ryan's eyes. This is not a joke. This is not a sideshow. I'm divorcing you. Of course, I'm not your wife, and I don't have to pay for someone else's house to be rebuilt, do I? Ryan snatched the divorce decree from me and tore it into shreds.
Don't be ridiculous. I'm not getting a divorce. Who's going to pay for it if you don't?
I smiled wickedly at him. I have dozens of divorce agreements ready for you to tear up. I won't give up until you sign it. They could tell how serious we were when they saw how thick the stack of paper was. My in-laws' faces turned pale and Ryan broke out in a cold sweat.
I'm going to rip up all that.
Ryan's blustering like that didn't hurt me at all. Fine, then I'll take you to court. And then a scream that I couldn't even describe escaped from my mother-in-law's mouth. Once the case goes to court, the whole neighborhood will know about it. There was no way these vain people would let this get settled in court. That's why I was able to come on strong. If you don't sign the divorce decree right now, we'll go to court. I've already consulted a lawyer. Your demands for money, your unauthorized use of our common savings. They say with this much evidence, I'll win the case.
Wait a minute. But you're my wife.
Ryan's scared and he began to beg.
It's your job to support me and my parents. I'm sorry I took the liberty of using our mutual savings, but it's my savings too, so it should be okay to use it, right?
I can't believe you still haven't changed your mind. I can't help it now, I yelled at him. I don't have any obligations to do that. Besides, you only put money in our joint savings account for the first few months. After that, it's been my money that I've been saving by myself. It's not money you're allowed to spend on your own. And then my in-laws, who had remained silent until then, intervened.
Emily, please, reconsider. This is also a way for you to show your filial piety. Your money will be used to make everyone happy. Don't you think that's a wonderful thing?
That's right. You can't just suddenly divorce. Let's talk about it again. Make everyone happy? What are they talking about? I could feel the blood rushing to my head and my face heating up. Are you kidding me? Everyone's happy? You only think about your own happiness. My happiness is not here. Even if we talk it out, it won't get resolved anyway, will it? I've been unhappy ever since we got married, I countered, then turned my cold gaze on Ryan. I don't care if you don't sign the papers right now. Do you really want to be the subject of neighborhood gossip for extra money and time? This comment triggered a sudden argument between the three of us. Hey, I don't want to be the subject of neighborhood gossip. This happened because you don't take better care of Emily.
Mom, you used to buy clothes and shoes with Emily's money. I'm so disappointed in both of you.
I can't believe I was part of a family with such terrible people. I feel ashamed of myself for not divorcing my husband sooner. The argument didn't seem to be ending, so I forced my way in. So, will you sign it or not? I told him coldly, and Ryan got teary-eyed and started to beg.
Wait. Let's talk this out.
Talk? There's nothing to talk about with you.
Okay, enough with the rebuilding. We can start over, and I'll make sure to pay my share.
Start over? With you? Are you kidding? I've been thinking that our marriage was a failure ever since our honeymoon.
Oh no. Emily, please, reconsider, okay?
Shut up. You're just a miser who takes his wife's money. You can go to hell along with your vain parents. Anyway, sign the papers quickly. You're no good.
No divorce.
Then all of a sudden my mother-in-law screamed, "Sign the papers." I don't want the neighbors to look at me funny. You need to throw away a wife who acts like this. With my mother-in-law on the verge of insanity, Ryan reluctantly signed the divorce decree. I immediately took the divorce agreement and left the house without saying a word. I heard Ryan's mosquito-like voice behind me, but I didn't look back. The divorce went through without a hitch. I had been secretly preparing to move out of the house, so the move went smoothly. The house that Ryan and I were living in was rented in his name, and the rent was deducted from Ryan's account. Even though it was his account, I was the one who paid the rent every month. Eventually, after my divorce, Ryan was unable to pay the rent, so he moved back in with his parents. After the divorce was finalized, I get alimony payments from him. In addition to the emotional distress, the money he spent without my permission and the money he gave to my in-laws amounted to quite a bit of money. The in-laws are the ones who care most about what others think of them. The fact that their son is divorced has caused them a lot of damage. They didn't want to make things worse than they already were, so they paid the amount of money I asked for without complaint. Of course, they don't have much money because their son has a small income and they are an elderly couple living on a pension. As a result, they ended up in debt. They are still living in the rundown house. My parents-in-law have been working part-time and Ryan has started working the night shift at his job. I, on the other hand, have returned home to live peacefully with my parents. My mother and father were surprised at first, but when I told them the reason, they welcomed me warmly. From now on, I'm going to take good care of my parents, which I haven't been able to do until now.